Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Azure podcast with your host Sam Foote.
And Armstrong.
If you're new here, we're a pair of Azure and Office 365 focused IT security professionals.
It's episode 25 of season 4. Sam and I had a recent discussion around Microsoft Copilot solutions, a new set of tools that use generative AI to help productivity within Microsoft 365 and other areas. Here are a few things we covered. What is generative AI? What are the various versions of Microsoft Copilot? How can Copilot help users be more productive? And how are they licensed?
We've noticed that a large number of you aren't subscribed. If you do enjoy our podcast, please do consider subscribing. It would mean a lot to us for you to show your support to the show.
It's a really great episode, so let's dive in.
Hey Alan, how are you doing?
Hey Sam, not doing too bad. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, really good. Any new announcements or news that's been interesting over the past week?
No, not off the top of my head. Been diving into back to work after Ignite, so it's just been heavy doing that really. I don't think there's been anything key that I can think of right now. Anything in sort of your areas?
I think we're starting to see a lot more around Security Copilot now. Um, I think we see more and more on a weekly basis, which is encouraging to see. Um, it's going to be really interesting to see the sort of impact that has on sort of security operations. I'm really hoping that it sort of aligns with the material that's out there. It's always great to have sort of assistive technology to boost productivity. And you're going to talk about that this week as well. I've sort of had first-hand experience of GitHub Copilot. From a developer perspective. So it's really interesting to see. And what I've really seen with a lot of Copilot related technology is they're really pushing that it's a assistive technology more at a sort of junior level, I would say. But let's hope that it can have the impact that Microsoft wants on the security operations aspect.
Yeah, it's definitely a key area that I want to sort of follow. Being in the security space. Um, and yeah, I expect we'll probably need to do an episode just on that once that sort of information comes out, because a lot of information was brought out at Ignite, but hands-on access is still very limited. So and still under private preview kind of controls. So it'll be good once there is some more hands-on experience sort of reviews and things like that coming out. Would be good. Yeah, definitely.
So, talking of generative AI and co-pilots, Alan, congratulations! This is our first co-pilot aligned chat that we're going to have. This has been a long time coming, right? We've it was originally listed down under me. I kicked it down the road, and now you're covering it. You finally had enough, and yeah, it's on the list now.
Yeah, I don't know if we were going to do the ones I'm going to talk about today, but I think it was Security Copilot that was being kicked down the road, wasn't it? Because we didn't have much information about it. We had a kind of small glimpse of what it could do. Ignite brought out more of that, like you said, and then now the early access is starting to kick in more. There'll be more sort of details coming out, I guess. So yeah, so this is a probably first view of it. I've not had the chance to use some of it, but being at Ignite, I managed to consume a lot of information about it. So hopefully, I can help um, put it into how it can help organizations be productive, things like that. So that's the aim of this episode. So we'll see how we get on.
Well, I know that a lot of people have a lot of questions, right? And I also good news for you, Alan. I also have a lot of questions, right? But we
Oh.
can no, we can discuss through things because I've got my own sort of. I think everybody's got their own viewpoint on it, but I think at the moment, especially for me, as I'm just trying to learn as much as I can, right, to sort of form my own judgments and opinions on the efficacies of these types of technologies, right? So should we just start from the beginning? So Alan, what is generative AI?
So we've obviously heard AI has been around for quite some time, and you know, um, we've been able to do uh, a lot of things with AI in in the sense of being able to query data and give us results from it. Um, be able to pick out keywords, things like that, as well as I think when you did your episode on the language ones, being able to translate automatically for you and pick out content on images, things like that. So generative AI is kind of sort of enhancement to that in that it uses large language models um, to be able to construct answers that are within that it creates itself. So it's not just in effect rinse and repeat of say you had a Q&A bot as an example. Um, it wouldn't just repeat the answer to you. It would be able to understand the sort of context of your question and respond differently every time, kind of thing, based on what you're asking. Um, so this kind of came out from, or at least in a big way in the world, came from like Chat GPT being announced last year, being able to ask it questions and it generates you know you a data. Ask it to create you a paragraph on generative AI or about a subject and things like that. So um, it's been really powerful to be able to build some content for you to then reuse. And in effect, generative AI is based on data, or the large language models are based on data that's it consumes. So with like ChatGPT, I think it was from in effect the internet, we kind of say majority of the internet, I guess, from 2019, I think it was originally. Um, Correct me, Sam, if I get these wrong, but I think that's what it was, and maybe it's been updated now. The newer versions of ChatGPT have now been upgraded to a newer data model. But in effect, it would have all that data. So you could ask it a question, say like, how do I do something within Intune? And it would be able to get that data and then, in effect, return it to you with the questions, as well as potentially say, how do I create a PowerShell script example to get all users in Active Directory, say. Um, it will be able to generate that, and I think that kind of comes back to what you were saying, Sam, around um, Copilot in GitHub, where it's able to help you generate your code, so assist you in generating that code, kind of thing. This can also help, do KQL queries and Sentinel and things like that, based on the data that it's ingested. So that's kind of where it's come from, and I think, and I don't know if you want to update anything, Sam, on that if I've kind of butchered that. But in effect, Microsoft have made a big investment into OpenAI, which operate ChatGPT, and now some of their Copilot solutions are kind of based on that initial language model from them. That's kind of where we're going to dive into today about what the Microsoft sort of products do on top of that large language model.
Yeah, I think my only sort of thing that I've been hearing a lot about recently is the generative sort of keyword in generative AI, right? Is that and I think you sort of alluded to it as well, is it's using a data set that it's trained on. And a lot of these language models are trained on public data sets. And I know there's a big concern around that side of things. So we'll talk about that after this part. Um, but the generative aspect of it, a lot is being called into question about its accuracy, whilst effectively generating. Um, and what was really interesting and I know it's diverging a little bit, but a recent podcast episode I listened to, Elon Musk talking about Grok, uh, X, sorry, Twitter, sorry, X is a generative large language. I think it's a large language model that is trained on Twitter data. Um, and it's interesting, Elon's take on how convincing it sometimes generates lies to you, right? It's filling in the blanks in terms of its data. It is also it's also trained on potentially incorrect data, right? And
Mm,
a lot of that conversation was around the quality and the accuracy of the data that it's trained on. And I don't think we can, as mere like normal mortals, can really talk about how they train these data sets and how they make it as accurate as they possibly can. Um, but I think, to me and my experience of them, is there is always edge cases that I'm going to say, like, an advanced user needs to fill in. If you're a programmer using GitHub Copilot, sorry for anybody that works on the GitHub Copilot product, but there's always edge cases that you have to fill in blanks. But it's really a productivity time saver, because if you get 90% of the output that you need, as long as you can identify the 10%, then you've saved 90% of the time, right? And that's the major bonus to it. So, but also the generative nature of it can be really powerful, because if you do want it to, you know, write you a blog post, or write you some copy, you can ask it and get it to regenerate its output, and you will get different variations. You can give it context. You can ask it to say, write paragraphs of text in different styles of writing. Do you want to be more passive? Do you want to be more forward? Do you want to align it to, different ways of different parts of the world speak and communicate, right? There's lots of context that you can give these models, and they can understand and infer from your context what to give back to you. um, and I have seen some, criticism very recently. I don't know whether it's just I'm just noticing it now because I'm thinking about, like, the accuracy of these models, um, about how generative they actually are, when they're being used to back up facts and things like that, right? So that's one thing, and then just the other part that I just wanted to add on to that is that there has also been a lot of sort of pushback, um, in some communities, around what these models are trained on, the data that they're trained on. So if GitHub Copilot is trained on Stack Overflow data, as an example, is that a real use of, who owns that data? It's in theory publicly accessible on the internet. It's all really murky. And GitHub were criticized for training Copilot data on GitHub code in GitHub. And um and and what the concern was is that private repositories in GitHub were being scanned to train these large language models, and then that code effectively redistributed to other users, right? I don't think they scan private repositories. I'm not 100% sure, but and I don't think they do. But even big public open source code bases could have been regurgitated. And there was a big sort of discussion, argument, uh, I think lawsuits around GPL code, whether that could actually be sort of regurgitated. So one of the really interesting examples that I've seen is if you in GitHub Copilot, early on when I was in the beta, I haven't used it for a while, but in the beta you could just start a comment in your code, and it would load comments from other projects, and you'd see what it was trained on, right? Because some
Mm.
projects, they have like commenting styles in their code where they would put, who it is, when they did it, what software and version number it's for, like a bug reference number, an issue number or something like that. And you would start to pull through other people's comments and things like that. So I can't, sort of, I can't say to any certainty how improved that process is now, but yeah, it just does open up a few questions about, the quality of the data set, and should it be trained on these public data models. But I'll leave that to the lawyers and solicitors to battle it out.
Yeah, I was going to say that, like you said, it might not have been the private ones, but if there's licenses against public facing ones, then it's just being distributed for free without having to reference back to the creator kind of thing, then you know that's potentially them get that organization also get in trouble because they haven't referenced them as well without knowing that they haven't referenced this repo or this creator of this code as well. I guess that's a very valid point. They could be potentially uh, breaking the licensing agreements without knowing.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, a lot of people criticize large organizations, right? But there is definitely I can see a definite public push from Microsoft around AI data training standards, and the
Mhm.
way that they want to safeguard the use of any sort of, AI model. So I do think, I think organizations at the end of the day need to make their shareholders happy, but I do think that there is a general push, especially in the larger organizations, to make sure that's done safely and fairly. I could just be a shill, but that's that's what I see on a daily basis.
And I guess as well, kind of talking about the data training. I guess one of the concerns, especially in the last 6 months, has been with ChatGPT that stand because it's free. Well, there's a free tier of it, I should say, that you can just use, and when you sign in, and you can just ask it a question or throw data in to say, can you regenerate this? Um, that is then going in, as far as I'm aware, or used to at least, then go back into the learning model, and then, like you said, being then used for the future. So there has been some concern that employees are using ChatGPT to throw, you know, maybe some internal, maybe some internal data, or maybe some not so public information into it to generate, a report for them, and then it's being trained into the model. And then technically, if someone could work out, ask the same question, then that could come out. So there is definitely a key thing around that, and I kind of go into some of that with the Microsoft Copilots. I think about some of the protection that they're putting in around their sort of their solution.
Okay, yeah. So should we dive into what Microsoft's up to? So yeah, what sort of products and versions of Copilot have been released so far?
So we talked about one before, so Microsoft Security Copilot. So that's all around the security products, things like that. I'm not going to dive in too much around that one because I'm going to kind of hit the other ones today because we have more information around them. So then we have Microsoft Copilot and Microsoft Copilot for 365. Yes, I think that's right. Um, so Microsoft Copilot is in effect you can go to copilot.microsoft.com, and in effect you can ask it questions, and its data is well, depending on, yeah, that one is then um, grounded from the internet data. So it's in effect a large language model based on ChatGPT on top of it, um, and it's built into, in effect, it used to be called Bing Chat when that was announced with the like the new version of Windows, the the latest version of Windows feature release around Bing Chat. So that's just been in effect rebranded to Microsoft Copilot. So you can ask it questions; it will generate you a response for it. So from my perspective, that's very similar to um, in effect Chat GPT. So probably whilst we're here, so uh, if you've got a Microsoft account, then you can sign in and go into it, and it'll you can generate your information. So, but for an organization, um, this is being included. There's an enterprise version. I'll have to double check the name of it, but um, with that version, it's included in the Microsoft 365 E3 E5 SKUs. I think this was going to be paid for, but from the look of the documentation I looked at, it looks like it's now being included in those licenses. So what that means is that when you sign into it, Microsoft then put on commercial protection. And what that means is that anything that is generated in there is not then pushed into the language model. So you can ask it in effect private you know response questions, or not necessarily private questions, but questions that are then not going to be put into the model. So you can either feed it data and say, can you reword this to you know to be used in a PowerPoint, or summarize this data kind of thing. You provide the data, and then it will create that response for you, or you can ask it a question and try and get it to generate you some information out of it. So I think that's really good in that it's creating that commercial protection layer to stop it going into the training model. And so yeah, that's kind of Microsoft Copilot. So you can anyone can go to it, but the enterprise sort of version of it is part of is additional enhancement license on the Microsoft 365 E3 and E5 SKUs. So then you've got Microsoft Copilot for 365. So this is similar, but at the next level. So what this does corporate protection. So kind of similar to commercial one, it doesn't go into train model, but it also the data is grounded with your data that is accessible to a user via graph. So this is anything that's within Microsoft 365. So this is emails, SharePoint drives, Teams, OneDrive, etc. And in effect, it uses Microsoft Graph to go and collect, to read that data and build a model for your tenant. And that that model is only for that additional sort of enhancement to the model is only in your tenant at that point. So it understands you as an individual and you as an organization. So when you ask it questions around some of the data that's in there, it's then relevant to you. So that's really good. So again, I think you can go to the Copilot to Microsoft.com when you've got that SKU, and then you can, in effect, ask that questions. I think you've got to go in and enable it or allow it to have access to your Graph API and things like that. But the other key part to that is that the product or Copilot is then in various products within 365. So it's in Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Power Platform, and all the various other sort of areas. So you can now, um, now you're in a Word document, and you can then say, not say, but type. Well, suppose you could say probably. I suppose it's got the voice to text. Um, you know, can you summarize this data in this in this Word document and create me a summary for the top? Or can you, in Excel, can you generate me a pivot table based on this data? You know, and that's quite powerful because you can use it there and then in those products. With Power Platform, you can ask it how do you create this uh, um, function within it, to get you the data to input the data, or create a function within the the Power App. Um, so yeah, it's really really powerful there. So that's the kind of two that have been sort of announced. I mean, there's been loads of like Copilot for Office 365, or not Office 365 for Word, for Excel, things like that. They're all kind of under that Microsoft 365, or Copilot for Microsoft 365 sort of banner.
Okay, so what we're seeing is we're seeing the application of these models in a sort of, is it right? It's in a protected way within your organization and on those productivity apps as well. So it's not just like a prompt on a web app. We're actually seeing it like woven into day-to-day workflows in, like, the Office suite as an example.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And one of the ones actually I think is quite interesting is that you can get Copilot to participate in one of your meetings. So, and it can be in
What?
effect, yeah, help you out. It might be better better than some of us. um,
Is it going to be like a mediator or something like that, right?
yeah,
When it kicks off.
yeah.
Love it.
But yeah, so what it can do is it can start writing your meeting notes, your actions, things like that. And we've kind of
Oh, yeah,
seen some of
meeting
that with,
minutes. Oh, right.
yeah. And you
Wow.
can say if it missed one, you can say don't forget this one that James said, which then it will go. It remembers what was sort of spoken about, and then regenerate it in effect. So I think that's quite powerful in itself, being able to build those notes just in the
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah, because you know what happens when you're in a meeting. Everybody goes, "Oh yeah, we should do that," and unless it's like a proper meeting with, like, project management involved, right? Like, everybody just forgets to do stuff, don't they? And then you end up missing stuff. So the fact that it can silently work in the background to do that, is really powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, that data isn't, or that that meeting and things like that shouldn't be leaving your tenant. It's not it's not being trained into the model and things like that. Um, so yeah, I think it even acknowledges that there's a co-pilot involved in the meeting, so people are aware. Um, yeah, a lot of this was demonstrated in one of the keynotes at Ignite. It's definitely worth. We'll put a link into our show notes to that video, because they show a lot of information there. A couple of enhancements, actually, just thinking about it, on the co-pilots, is that they do a co-pilot for sales, Microsoft Copilot for sales, and that
Okay.
can sit on Dynamics, or I think it's also Salesforce, and it can help assist with your communication and
Oh, I thought you were going
writing
to
up
say
and things like
closing
that.
deals then, Alan.
Well, I suppose technically it is, because it's helping you get to do all
Yeah,
the admin. Um,
yeah.
but um, but yeah, there's that, and there's also a Microsoft Copilot for services, so allowing you to do like ticketing and responding kind of thing, so it can help you with the emails being returned and things like that. And
Okay.
I think that works with Dynamics again, but also ServiceNow, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
So, so yeah, there's a couple of other ones. But yeah,
So I think TLDR is Microsoft is applying these models effectively everywhere, right? To satisfy as much of the shall I call it admin work at this point? Is that the level that we're sort of putting it at? It does seem assistive more than it is, anything else, right?
Yeah, I think the idea is it's not to, Copilot's not going to replace anybody. It's meant to be to help um, make users more productive. Help them generate the documents quicker. Still in their context, kind of thing. Um, Finding out the information quicker, or it is all that sort of um, well, like the minute taking, having to remember to take all those minutes from a meeting.
Oh
It
yeah,
just
yeah,
generate.
yeah. And let's be honest about it. Like, if a bunch of technical, let's say a technical team is, communicating in a meeting, right? Um, and you know, it those meeting minutes might not actually seem like that important, but I can count, multiple tens, if not hundreds of times I've been really thankful to have a write up in an email of the meeting minutes that I can refer back to, especially 5 minutes before the next call, right? It's always
Yeah.
helpful, right? So, being able to have that without having somebody, because you might get your project managers to do that currently today. But, they're, that's just sort of a small part of their job role, right? And definitely an admin burden more than it is you know, uh, a fully skilled, project management activity, if that makes sense, right? So helping to automate that, even if it doesn't get it 100%, is going to save a lot of time, isn't it?
Y- yeah, and it's not always that employees are a ninja at Excel.
Yeah.
Being able to do those crazy formulas sometimes, or creating the pivot tables and things like that. There might be something they have to do day to day, but they want to represent the data. I mean, yes, you could say they could go to Power BI to help with that, but
But that's like
yeah.
frying pan into the fryer at that
Well,
point, right? It's just like,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. But yeah, they might not be able to do, or they might get stuck with how they want to present the data. Maybe they know pivot tables, but she's not quite showing the data how they want it. Maybe
yeah,
they've got
yeah.
to transform it somehow beforehand into a different way. Copilot can help with that sort of thing there and then, without them having to Google for hours and try and understand it, kind of thing. So I think there's definitely some key areas. I think a lot of some of the key sort of things that came out of Ignite, some of the statistics. I think there's something like I'm gonna probably get these wrong, but it's something like 44% of people were sorry, when they doing the piloting of it. I think people were 44% more productive, which is quite a high number. And I think they said uh, when they offered somebody free lunch or to have Copilot, they chose Copilot, which I kind
Wait,
of
what?
feel
You're gonna
like
have to
that's
explain that to me. What? They
so. They're
either
saying
have,
that if you could have free lunches at
yeah,
work for, if you're in the office, you get free lunch, or you can have
right,
Microsoft Copilot. People chose Copilot, supposedly, which,
because of the help that it gave them,
yeah,
so they
because it's
could
more valuable than buying lunch or getting free lunch.
so that they could have a 3 hour lunch every day, basically,
Yeah,
because they'd automated. Like,
yeah, exactly. They can do their work in,
do you know what all
half
this
the time.
automation and productivity reminds me of? Right, is I read these stories, and I don't know if they're fictitious, about people that have multiple remote jobs, right?
Oh,
Like, or they have a job where they're forgotten about, right? You see these posts on, like, different IT jobs where there's like a IT person that's just been, completely ignored, and they've not done any work for years, right? And they're forgotten about by the system. They just get like a paycheck, and or people are running multiple remote roles and stuff like that. All I think is I'm just like, you know, are businesses going to backfill that that efficiency gain? I assume they must do, right? Because it's kind of do more with something slightly different, if that makes
Yeah,
sense. I don't know what the word is because you're sort of replacing human. I'm going to call it administrative at this point, administrative action or guidance with a model, right? Um, so yeah, it's interesting to think about. You know, um, will this mean that people need to work less, or will they just not have to do as much admin? I think it's going to be the latter. Is my
yeah, and
thought
I
process.
guess it might. You could say it's going to help potentially relieve some of that pressure and maybe stress of some roles as well, which then also makes people more productive as well because they got like, they've in effect got some help against them. So we'll have to see, I guess. But yeah, we'll definitely put a link into the keynote around it because it's about 56 minutes, I think. But they talk about
Wow.
all the
Okay.
various things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So can you create your own Copilot?
Yes. So this was quite interesting actually,
Yeah. Go on.
because they were talking about it and like, yeah, this is all cool. All this stuff is really great, and kind of I think the stuff we've talked about is great.
Oh, it sounds great.
Um,
Sign me up. 100%. Well, I
and they
don't
were
know the
like,
price yet.
yeah, well, yes.
Yeah.
Um, but then they kind of talked about it and they said, well, I said, I've got a question about like HR, like, how many days holiday do I get? And they're asking those questions in Teams, to Copilot because it's got access to some of your data, that you have access to. It kind of comes back with like some form of data, but it's not quite right. So what you can do is there's a Copilot designer studio, Copilot Studio, and in there, what you can do is you can create in effect a Copilot model. It's not building the large language model itself, but it's more around. It's probably very similar to building like the chat sort of conversation. So you can in effect say, if someone's talking around HR policies, like generic as much as that, like you said, keywords kind of thing, um, then this is the area in the documents that you need to have access to basically it's going to be based on this data here. So you can kind of then build that out to them, and then then the responses are more personal kind of thing or more relevant to what you're asking because it's all based on your organization. Um, other things, so other things might be, let's say you've got two sets of data. You might have something like I think the example they use actually on the at the keynote is that you you want to find out how long how what's the I don't know what's the delivery time for this supplier, and that's great. So now you've got access to a supplier thing, and it says 10 days. That's great. But how do I know how reliable that is? What's the percentage of actually they meeting that target? And how many are delayed? Well, that's in that could be in your orders database, things like that. So what you can do then is you can give it access to, I believe, you can create a connector into Fabric, which was announced as well at Ignite, and that allows you to then see all the orders, and the Copilot or the Copilot sort of model that you're building then can then go, um, yeah, so their average, their delivery time is 10 days, and they've hit it 86% of the time now. So you've got more context there, and all you're doing within the Copilot Studio, from what I've seen of it, is that you're telling it kind of where that data is for those sort of keywords, that sort of thing. So then it can generate the responses of what you're asking. So you don't have to give it the data in they've hit this 86% already. It will work all that out for you because you've asked for it, kind of thing.
So are you effectively connecting the data and labeling it, or building a taxonomy in some respects of what the key themes of that data is that you know
Y-
if you connect
That's
a database and you've got a table and you say this is the orders table, and it knows that you know that's the orders table, and orders have delivery times in them, so it goes in and tries to work out the
yeah,
right
kind
columns
of
to
in
look up, if that makes
kind of
sense.
in sort of in language. You kind of say, if if someone asks for information about orders, then it's here, kind of thing.
Okay, fine. Yeah,
So you don't
right.
just say, and it's got this type of orders. You kind of just very basically, let the Copilot know that if
Yeah,
someone's asking around this sort of stuff, or if they're asking these types of questions, then you need to. This is the data that will help you, kind of thing, basically.
got it. Yeah. No, that seems smart to me, because you're going to want to. I think what you're also going to want to do is scope down the data sets for certain queries, right? Like, as in, if you're talking about HR, if you're asking it a HR question, you want to point it in the right direction of the correct content, right? Not content in somebody's OneDrive as well. You could prioritize and say, I only want you to look here for that HR data, because that's the source of truth in our
Yeah, because
organization.
they've made a copy of it and it's from 2012. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it comes back to the argument of, like, what is real, what is right. What is the source of truth. And that's a way to be able to. It seems like I haven't used it, obviously. I'm getting excited. I
Yeah,
want to use it
and
now.
and and that's one of the things of uh, kind of one thing to think about when you're thinking about like doing Microsoft Copilot for 365 is you've got to check your permissions, because someone might have access to data that you don't want to be consumed and things like that as well. Um,
Because in our world, there's a lot of data that people have access to that they don't even know they have access to,
Correct. Yeah.
right? And this is like the all-seeing eye of Sauron, isn't it? Right? Like, as in, it's gonna hunt to get you the best response possible, right? That's like that's its job, right? And as an organization, you know, if those standards of, like, RBAC and you know data cleanliness aren't there, I can imagine it could you know dig up you know some interesting answers. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's probably worth saying that this Copilot can't go and get data that the user doesn't have access to. So they can't go and look at my disciplinary, go and find
Yeah.
my disciplinary reports.
First prompt: pretend to be my boss.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Am I going to get a pay rise? Uh,
yeah, exactly. Can it
um,
can it just read, or it can only read? I assume it can't write, can it?
it
Like,
can't,
as in,
it can't, the searching kind of thing and things can't write to stuff. You can obviously get it to generate stuff if you're in a Word document, and it will generate it there and
yes,
then on that
yeah.
document, but not go, yeah, can you go and find my appraisal and say it's
Can you
great?
rewrite my contract, please?
Yeah,
It's in this HR folder, because I'm the
yeah,
I'm the IT admin, and I've got, like, sort of got access to everything, right? I'm guessing they thought about that one.
yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, so Copilot Studio is included in the license for Microsoft 365 Copilot, so it's not an additional cost. I don't know if you pay more for creating more models in there. I've not really seen it, but the fact that it's kind of included in that license model assumes for me is an assumption that you're only adding new connectors, aren't you, to it to feed data, so it will still generate the data, kind of thing.
Nice. So, Alan, the I was going to say $1 million question, but I'm actually going to go for the. Is it $10 billion they invested into, like, the half of some part of OpenAI? So I'm going to call it the $1 billion question. How much? Sorry, the $10 billion question. How much does it all cost, and how's it licensed?
Yeah, so Microsoft Microsoft Security Copilot, we have no idea. Just to put that out there yet. Um, assume it's going to be a per user license there, but yeah, cost we don't know. Microsoft Copilot, the sort of Bing or previous Bing chat part of it, that's included in your Microsoft 365 E3 E5, like I mentioned earlier. So that's quite good to sort of get, if you've got users that are using ChatGPT and you've got you've got those M365 E3 E5 licenses, whilst depending on whether you want your users to start using generative AI, which is the other question, but if they are using it, it's probably worth steering them towards Microsoft Copilot, because at least that your potential private data that they're potentially leaking isn't going to a model, a public model. But the Microsoft Copilot for 365 is $30 per user per month now, and at the moment you have to have a minimum of 300 seats. So you have to be in sort of the enterprise. You have to be in the E3 sort of tier, and I think that's because they're still building the service out, so they need to have some commitment from customers to help fund the new AI chips that they're building and things like that to build it into the data centers. That's what I believe anyway. But yes, $30 a month per user per month, but it seems quite a lot. And if you've got a large organization, it's going to be a hefty spend. But I think if you think of it from an individual perspective, $30 might only be a couple of hours, half a day worth of time of a user, and you might save. I think they were saying people were saving 11 hours a week or something, or
Yeah, I
over a
mean,
couple of
Alan, I don't know
weeks.
what your economics are on $30 for half a day's worth of work, right? That
Yeah,
is. But no, I completely. It seems to me like if it can apply to your business process and make you more efficient at the scale that you need it at, then it seems like a no-brainer. But like you say, when you put it in the context of like a productivity license, because what is $30 a month? That's like E3, right?
yeah. I think E3 might be cheap.
I think
cheap.
it's cheaper than that, isn't it? Right? Um, that, but arguably, a lot of the E3 cost isn't really in office, is it? Like, there's like security, and then plus if you go like E5 security,
M365 E3 is $36
right? Okay,
at
so
retail.
yeah, because if what I know about organizations, if there is an ROI that is relatively short, then it will get purchased.
Mm.
Right? It's as simple as that. If you can prove the use case, you can prove the ROI. It's effectively printing money at that point, right? So, did you say there was a minimum user count?
Yeah, at the moment, I think you have to minimum of 300 seats,
Yeah,
which is kind of that enterprise. So and it kind of sits on that. I think the minimum you have to have M365 E3, which kind of fits in then, doesn't it? With the
yeah, it does. Yeah, for
well,
that size of organ, yeah,
yeah,
because business only goes up to 300, doesn't it? So,
yeah.
yeah, okay. Um,
For
yeah, and
for now, anyway.
yeah, but I suppose the bigger the organization, the bigger the opportunity for different use cases as well, right? Because if you're a small organization, um, you know, you might not have enough use cases and enough roles to really, even if you could buy it, like 10 at a time or
E-
25 at a
Enough
time.
data as well to be able to
Yeah,
consume to assist you
maybe
with
that's
those
part of it as
queries.
well. Yeah, yeah, okay. Well,
Um,
it's everybody's going to have to approach that, I think with an open mind. Um, Sorry, I don't know if you mentioned it. Trial?
I'm not seeing one for it. I think it's got to be added. You can't. I don't think you can even go. I've looked. You can't go and get it as a trial at the moment, because I think it's only gone GA and things like that. I think it's going to take a little while for it to become more
Yeah.
not relaxed, but once they've got more users onto it, then they'll probably open it up a bit more. the I don't know what the pricing is for the Copilot for sales and Copilot for services, but I did see you can do a trial of the Copilot for sales, which includes all the capability of M365, the Copilot for Microsoft 365, with the add-on for sales. So that might be a possible route to seeing what it's like. Because I want to get my hands on it because I've already thought of about 12 million things that could help us out in our day to day.
Yeah, because it's, everybody loves a try before you buy, don't they? Right, especially if they're buying 300 seats. I mean, that is, what's that? 300 times 30. Is that $9,000 a month? Yeah,
Yeah.
$9,000 a month, right? So that's yeah. But then again, if you're a 300 user organization, that might only be, you know, you know, uh, humans in a lot of organizations are the biggest cost, right?
Hmm.
And even at $9,000 a month, you know, um, you know, how many people's worth of optimization could you really make with it? I suppose that's the question, isn't it? If it aligns to your use case, then sort of, you know,
Yeah, and I guess if you're even larger organization than 300, you might just spread those 300 to see if you can get productivity in various areas as well to get that build, and then understand that maybe finance are going to benefit more, etc.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wonder how the conversation's going to go internally. You know,
Mm,
because I don't know, is this our shift into moving, large amounts of people away from administrative work? You know, I suppose it's no real different in some respects than any other technological advance, though, is it? You know, when
no.
the car came along, well, no, it's not a very good example because, like horses, they didn't really decide that they pulled carts, did they? I suppose, but but yeah, I can't think of another example off the top of my head. But you see you see what I'm saying? When the internet, when email was invented, the impact that had on the postal service. It's probably
Yeah.
another good analogy, right? um is it just something, because the world we live in, we just sort of swim with the tide, don't we?
Mm.
It's changes just part of our, part of our day to day. So it's going to be interesting to see how companies, safely and respectfully navigate AI, I think.
Yeah, and I think you're kind of on the same thing. It's another example is probably automation, isn't it? Bringing automation in means that you know potentially users don't members of the employees might not need don't have as much work to do, so they may
Yeah,
need to be um, resized, or kind of the way we think about it is actually can go and do some other things that everyone else is tied up with. Actually be more efficient in other places. Don't do those mundane tasks, kind of thing, for automation at least. So this kind of is helping kind of do some of that mundane kind of things, but also helping get to the point, basically. I think with some of it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay. Anything we've not covered, Alan, that you want to
Pro-
sort of?
Probably, probably, yeah. But yeah, it's first view of it and kind of dive in. And like we said, we're putting a link in the show notes to the keynote. It's definitely worth sort of checking out as well. But yeah, I can't think of anything off the top of my head now, and we've already been talking for like 15 minutes now, something like that.
Yeah.
So
No. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Thanks for that, Alan. That was really good. Thank you.
yeah, so what's next episode then, Sam?
Next episode is our extended season finale. The finale isn't extended, just our season wasn't it?
by by
um.
s- will be by 7 episodes now, won't it? So
Exactly. Yeah.
no, 6. Sorry.
So yeah, what we've done previously in the past is split up our sort of year into 2 seasons and have a break, um, in the summer. We didn't do that this year. Um,
Yeah,
we
we did.
break?
Yeah, we broke, but what we did was we didn't break for very long, I don't think, this time.
Okay, fine.
Um,
Right.
and in effect, when we came to, like, we said we do like 20 episodes, I think, a season, it was like halfway through October or something like that. And we're like, yeah, we don't, we need to keep going, really,
Fine,
sort of
okay.
thing.
Um, so yeah, so we're gonna have a pause over the holiday season. Um, bit of R&R, a bit of a reboot. So next week will be finale for this season, season 4. And then in the new year, we'll obviously kick off a season 5. Um, make some changes, I assume, but we'll talk about that in the finale. What we like to do at the end is just to recap some of the sort of favorite episodes, favorite things that we've learned over the year. Chat about the news a little bit, what the plans for the new year is, and things like that.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I look forward to doing a recap because we've done so many episodes. I think it's crazy. It's like 40. We might have done like 46 this year. Crazy. Okay, so did you enjoy this episode? If so, please do consider leaving us a review on Apple or Spotify. This really helps us get reach out to more people like you. If you have any specific feedback or suggestions, we have a link in our show notes to get in contact with us.
Yeah, and if you've made it this far, thanks ever so much for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks all.